First contact fallout. The vast emptiness of space stretched before Captain Maya Reyes as she stood on the observation deck of the UES Horizon. The diplomatic vessel represented humanity's best efforts at interstellar relations, sleek, functional, and equipped with translation matrices and cultural databases from 2 decades of careful galactic observation. Yet as Maya watched the approaching Valkyrie flagship, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to be tested in ways they hadn't prepared for. "They're hailing us, Captain," Lieutenant Sato reported from her communication station. "Standard diplomatic frequencies." Maya straightened her uniform jacket. On screen, the holographic display flickered to life, revealing a tall, angular figure with iridescent scales that shifted color with each subtle movement. Supreme Commander Thrax of the Valkyrie Dominion studied the human delegation with unblinking, compound eyes. "Captain Reyes," the alien's voice came through the translator with a metallic edge. "The Dominion acknowledges your request for diplomatic exchange." "Supreme Commander," Maya responded with a respectful nod. "The United Earth Federation extends its hand in peaceful cooperation. We've prepared extensive cultural and scientific exchanges to facilitate mutual understanding." Thrax's scales rippled in what Maya's briefing suggested was amusement or possibly contempt. "Your species is eager, Captain. Perhaps too eager. The Dominion has observed your developmental trajectory. You achieved spaceflight nearly 2 centuries ago. Such rapid expansion concerns us." Maya kept her expression neutral despite the warning signals flaring in her mind. "Progress through cooperation has been humanity's approach. We've learned much from the Arcturus Coalition and other galactic neighbors." "Yes, your alliances with the weaker species," Thrax remarked. "The Valkyrie prefers strength, Captain. Your technology, while impressive for your development stage, remains primitive by Dominion standards." The diplomatic dance continued for nearly an hour, but Maya could sense the dismissive undertones in every exchange. The Valkyrie viewed humans as cosmic infants, barely worth acknowledging except as potential subjects or obstacles to remove. After the transmission ended, Maya turned to her first officer, Commander Jackson. "They're testing us, sizing us up." Jackson nodded grimly. "Their fleet movements suggest they're doing more than talking, Captain. Intelligence reports 3 Valkyrie battle cruisers have altered course toward Proxima Station." Maya's blood ran cold. Proxima Research Station was humanity's most advanced scientific outpost, home to over 3,000 researchers and their families, working on everything from xenobiology to quantum communications. If the Valkyrie were making a move there, "Contact Earth Command immediately," she ordered, "and set course for Proxima. Maximum speed." The Horizon arrived too late. Proxima Station hung in space like a wounded animal, its external structures damaged and dark. 3 massive Valkyrie vessels surrounded it, energy tethers connecting them to the station as they systematically downloaded its databases and transferred equipment. "They've completely bypassed our security protocols," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from the tactical station, disbelief evident in his voice. "Station defense systems never even activated." Maya gripped the edge of her command console. "Life signs. All personnel appear to be alive." Seto confirmed. They'd been contained in the residential sectors. A communication alert chimed, and Supreme Commander Thrax appeared once more on the main display. Scales now a satisfied azure. "Captain Reyes, your arrival is noted but unnecessary. The Valkyrie Dominion has claimed this research facility under galactic salvage rights." "Salvage rights?" Maya's voice was dangerously calm. "Proxima Station is an active human research facility in sovereign Federation space." Thrax made a dismissive gesture. "A primitive facility conducting research already completed by the Dominion centuries ago. We are simply redistributing resources to their optimal use. Your personnel will be returned to Earth once we've completed our inventory." "This is an act of war, Commander Thrax," Maya stated flatly. The Valkyrie's scales rippled in that same pattern of amusement. "War requires comparable adversaries, Captain. This is merely resource acquisition. Your species lacks the technological capacity to challenge the Dominion. We've analyzed your weapons systems, your defensive capabilities, your tactical patterns. By our calculations, total human military assets would barely destroy a single Valkyrie battle group. On the tactical display, Maya could see the Valkyrie vessel's weapons systems powering up. Not enough for total destruction, but sufficient to cripple the horizon if needed. "Commander," she said carefully, "I strongly urge you to reconsider. Humans have a long history of responding disproportionately to threats. Your historical aggression is well documented," Thrax acknowledged. "As are your limitations. The Valkyrie have conquered species with far greater technological advancement than yours. We understand conquest, Captain. We understand the precise application of superior force." Maya's eyes narrowed. "What you don't understand is humanity." "We understand everything we need to," Thrax replied. "Return to Earth, Captain Reyes. Inform your leaders that the Proxima sector now falls under Valkyrie jurisdiction. Any military response will be met with appropriate force. We have no desire to harm your species, merely to ensure you understand your place in the galactic hierarchy." The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Orders, Captain," Commander Jackson asked quietly. Maya stared at the tactical display, at the overwhelming Valkyrie presence around Proxima Station. 3,000 human lives hung in the balance. "Send a Priority 1 transmission to Earth Command," she said finally. "Include all sensor data and communication logs. Then set course for Earth, maximum speed." "We're just leaving them?" Lieutenant Rodriguez questioned, unable to hide his disbelief. Maya turned to face her bridge crew, her expression hardening into something that would have made Supreme Commander Thrax reconsider his assessment of human threat potential. "We're going to show the Valkyrie exactly why technological superiority isn't everything," she said, "and why, throughout human history, underestimating us has always been the last mistake our adversaries make." Admiral Elena Vasquez of Earth Defense Command sat in stunned silence as the Horizon's transmission concluded. Around the conference table, military and civilian leaders of the United Earth Federation processed the implications of what they'd just witnessed. 3,000 civilians, Defense Minister Okafor muttered, held hostage by an alien power we've barely established contact with. "Not just hostages," General Zhang added grimly. "The Valkyrie have seized our most advanced research facility. The technological windfall alone is secondary to our people," President Diaz interrupted firmly. "Admiral Vasquez, what are our military options?" Vasquez brought up the holographic display showing the Valkyrie fleet positions. "Limited, Madam President. Captain Rice's assessment is accurate. The Valkyrie vessels outclass ours in both defensive and offensive capabilities. A direct confrontation would result in significant casualties. So we just capitulate?" Minister Okafor demanded. "No," Vasquez replied, a slow smile spreading across her face. "We remind them that humans don't fight fair." She manipulated the holographic display, bringing up personnel files of the Proxima Station staff. Among the civilians on that station are 60 former Special Forces operators who transitioned to scientific roles. The station's chief of security, Dr. Elias Chen, was previously commander of Earth's 9th Asymmetric Warfare Division. President Diaz leaned forward. "You're suggesting our people might already be organizing resistance. I'm suggesting, Madam President, that the Valkyrie have made a fundamental error in their assessment. They've evaluated our ships, our weapons, our conventional military tactics." Vasquez's eyes gleamed with something ancient and dangerous. "What they haven't accounted for is that humans have been perfecting the art of defeating technologically superior forces since before we left our planet." She turned to her fellow military commanders. "Activate Protocol Thermopylae, and get me a direct channel to Captain Reyes on the horizon. We need to coordinate our response." "The Valkyrie believe they've started a simple conquest," President Diaz observed. "But what they've actually done is provoke the one species in this galaxy that has never learned how to surrender, Admiral Vasquez finished. And they're about to learn exactly why that was a mistake. As the leadership of Earth mobilized for war, 3,000 humans aboard Proxima Station were already adapting, observing, and preparing. The Valkyrie had seized a research station, but what they didn't realize was that they'd created the perfect laboratory for humanity to demonstrate why technological superiority wasn't the only factor that mattered in warfare. And why, throughout human history, those who dismissed humans as primitive rarely lived long enough to correct their error. From the station's human maintenance crews, as Valkyrie security forces boarded the transport to secure its crew, they found exactly what they expected: 27 human civilians, all showing signs of oxygen deprivation and technical personnel desperately trying to stabilize life support systems. The humans were efficiently processed, scanned for weapons, none were found, and escorted to the containment areas with the rest of the station's population. What the Valkyrie did not detect were the quantum-encrypted communication devices surgically implanted beneath the skin of each new arrival. Nor did they recognize that among the civilian personnel were members of Earth's elite Ghost Operations Team, specialists in infiltration, sabotage, and psychological warfare. And most critically, they failed to notice that during the complicated docking procedure, when systems were being connected and recalibrated, several small devices had been attached to the station's external communication array, devices that would remain dormant until activated. That night, as the station's lighting dimmed for the sleep cycle, Major Samira Khan of Ghost Operations met Dr. Chen in Maintenance Shaft 12. Operation Trojan Horse successful, she reported crisply. All personnel accounted for. Equipment in place. Chen nodded. Casualties? None. Their security protocols are exactly as you reported, thorough but predictable. They scan for conventional weapons, energy signatures, and explosive compounds. They don't scan for surgical modifications or composite materials. And the package? Major Khan's expression remained neutral, but her eyes gleamed. Delivered and ready for activation. Phase 1 of Operation Guernica can commence on your order. Chen checked his hidden communicator, confirming the latest transmission from Earth Command. We move at 300 hours. Coordinate with Dr. Okuro's team on the power grid disruption. As they finalized the details, activity across the station continued as normal, or what the Valkyrie had come to accept as normal. Human work crews performed their assigned tasks. Security systems functioned within expected parameters. Nothing suggested that beneath the apparent compliance, 3,000 humans were preparing to demonstrate why technological superiority wasn't always the decisive factor in conflict. At 300 station time, Supreme Commander Thrax was awakened by an urgent communication from Sub-Commander Vex. Supreme Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings from multiple points across the station. Thrax's sleet-clouded mind cleared instantly. Specify. Electromagnetic pulses, precisely calibrated to. Vex's voice cut off abruptly as a wave of excruciating pain shot through Thrax's sensory scales. Throughout the Valkyrie command ship and across Proxima Station, every Valkyrie suddenly experienced the same agonizing sensation, as if their scales were being pulled from their bodies. The precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse didn't damage equipment or systems, but it created a frequency that resonated specifically with the sensitive neural connections in Valkyrie scales. As Thrax writhed in pain, human maintenance crews throughout the station moved with practiced efficiency, accessing critical systems, while Valkyrie security forces were temporarily incapacitated. The pulse lasted exactly 27 seconds, long enough to immobilize but not long enough to cause permanent damage. As the pain subsided, Thrax staggered to his command console, his scales still twitching with aftershocks. Security breach. He barked into the communication system. Full lockdown. But the Valkyrie communication network had mysteriously gone offline, replaced by an emergency backup system that limited transmissions to text only. And the security lockdown protocols. which should have sealed all compartments and restricted human movement, failed to activate. Instead, throughout the station, confused and disoriented Valkyrie security forces found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate their response. In the command center, Thrax managed to restore partial sensor functionality only to discover that the station's systems were no longer responding to Valkyrie command protocols. "What is happening?" he demanded of the Valkyrie technicians, struggling with their consoles. Before any could answer, the main display activated, showing Dr. Elias Chen, the supposedly compliant human, standing calmly in what appeared to be the station's central control room. "Supreme Commander Thrax," Chen addressed him directly. "By now you've realized that your control of Proxima Station has been compromised. What you're experiencing is called asymmetric warfare, a human specialty." Thrax's scales darkened with rage. "You cannot hope to defeat superior Valkyrie forces with primitive tactics." Chen's expression remained impassive. "You've misunderstood the situation from the beginning, Commander. This isn't about defeating your forces." Dr. Nasrin Patel, the station's chief medical officer, chimed in next. "I've been observing their physiology during their medical scans of our personnel. Their scales aren't just decorative. They're sensory organs, particularly sensitive to electromagnetic fields and temperature variations." Elias processed this information, adding it to the mental catalog of Valkyrie vulnerabilities he was compiling. "And communications." Dr. Wei Zong, communications specialist, grimaced. "They've completely locked down all standard channels, but they've overlooked the old emergency beacon system. It uses a frequency range their sensors don't seem to monitor." "Can we get a message to Earth?" "Not directly," Zhang admitted. "But we might be able to bounce a signal off the maintenance satellite network. Short burst transmission, highly encrypted." Elias nodded. "Make it happen. Priority is establishing contact with Earth Command." He unfolded a station schematic that Okoro had smuggled from engineering, spreading it on the floor between them. "Here's where we stand. The Valkyrie control all major systems and access points. They've confined us to residential sectors, but allow limited movement for work details they've established." His finger traced a route through the station's infrastructure. "What they don't realize is that this station was designed by paranoid humans who lived through the resource wars. There are maintenance passages, emergency protocols, and redundant systems they haven't discovered." Lieutenant Dias leaned forward. "What exactly are we planning here, Chen? We're scientists and researchers, not a military force. Even with the former service members among us, we're looking at maybe 100 people with combat training against 40 elite Valkyrie soldiers with superior technology." Elias met her gaze steadily. "We're not planning a frontal assault, Lieutenant. We're going to do what humans have always done when facing a technologically superior force. We adapt." He pointed to specific sections of the schematic. "Phase 1 is intelligence gathering, which we've begun. Phase 2 is establishing secure communication with Earth. Phase 3. A cold smile touched his lips. "Phase 3 is showing the Valkyrie exactly why technological superiority isn't always the deciding factor in conflict." 10 days into the occupation, Supreme Commander Thrax stood on the command deck of his flagship, reviewing progress reports from Proxima Station with growing satisfaction. The human research facility had yielded several interesting technological innovations, crude by Valkyrie standards, but impressively resourceful for such a young species. "The data extraction is proceeding efficiently," Supreme Commander, his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vex, reported. "The humans have been surprisingly cooperative." "Of course they have," Thrax responded, his scales shifting to a confident blue-green. "They recognize the futility of resistance. It is the natural order. Advanced species guide the development of primitive ones." Vex's scales flickered briefly with uncertainty. "There are reports from security forces about unusual power fluctuations in the station's systems. Their technology is unstable." Thrax dismissed the concern. "Have our engineers correct the deficiencies." "As you command." Vex hesitated before adding, the human designated as their security chief, Chen, has requested permission to organize the humans more efficiently. He claims it will improve productivity in the work details. Thrax considered this. The human Chen had shown himself to be pragmatic, quickly accepting Valkyrie authority and encouraging his fellow humans to cooperate. Such behavior indicated a properly subordinate mindset. Grant his request, Thrax decided. It will expedite our work if the humans maintain their own internal order. Maintain standard security protocols, of course. Of course, Supreme Commander. As Vex departed, Thrax turned his attention to the long-range scanners. Earth's defensive fleet had increased patrols near their homeworld, but had made no aggressive moves toward Valkyrie-controlled space. Their diplomatic channels had gone silent, a typical primitive response to demonstrate displeasure. The humans were doing exactly what the Dominion's behavioral analysis had predicted, posturing but ultimately accepting the new reality. In a few cycles, once the station had been fully processed, the Valkyrie would return the human personnel and establish formal dominance over this sector. Everything was proceeding according to plan. On Proxima Station, Elias Chen knelt beside an access panel in his private quarters, the only place he was reasonably certain wasn't under direct surveillance. The Valkyrie had scanned for obvious electronic devices, but had missed the mechanically triggered switch hidden within the panel, another paranoid design feature from the station's original engineers. With practiced fingers, he tapped out a message in old Earth Morse code. The signal would travel through the emergency maintenance network, bouncing between automated repair satellites before hopefully reaching Earth's deep space listening posts. QROXFI. Active, resist and see stabilished. Phase 1 complete. VLKRI, VULNI or ABI Lloyd. IES IDENTIFIED. Sensory CE Insight like. 2 EM fields. Predictable patrol patterns. Arrogancy. Await instructions. He sent the message 3 times before sealing the panel and returning to his bunk. Whether Earth would receive it or be able to respond remained uncertain. But across the station, his quiet resistance was taking shape. Engineers subtly sabotaged systems, creating minor malfunctions that required human assistance to repair, giving them access to restricted areas. Medical personnel conducting mandatory health checks subtly mapped Valkyrie physiology, identifying potential weaknesses. Communication specialists monitored Valkyrie transmissions, gradually deciphering their encryption protocols. And most importantly, 3,000 humans observed their captors with the patient, adaptive intelligence that had allowed their species to survive on a world that had tried to kill them countless times throughout their evolution. 14 days into the occupation, as Elias prepared for a meeting with his Valkyrie handler, his hidden communicator vibrated with an incoming signal. The message was brief but clear. THERMOPYLE protocol activated. Maintain position. Prepare for Phase 2. Earth remembers. Elias allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Valkyrie had made the same mistakes so many others had made throughout human history. They had confused technological advancement with superiority. They were about to learn the difference. Unconventional warfare. Admiral Vasquez stood before the assembled military leadership in Earth Defense Command's secure bunker, her expression grim as she activated the holographic display. Operation Thermopylae is now in effect, she announced. The display showed Proxima Station surrounded by Valkyrie vessels. Thanks to Dr. Chen's intelligence, we have confirmed 3 primary Valkyrie weaknesses: their over-reliance on technology, their physiological sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, and their cultural arrogance. General Zhang studied the tactical display skeptically. Even with this intelligence, a direct assault would be suicide. Their vessels outgun our entire fleet, which is why we won't be launching a direct assault, Vasquez replied. She nodded to Captain Maya Reyes, who had been recalled from the horizon to assist with planning. Reyes stepped forward. The Valkyrie expect a conventional response, either capitulation or a frontal attack. They've positioned their forces accordingly. She manipulated the display to show the defensive formation around Proxima. What they don't understand is that humans stopped fighting conventional wars centuries ago. "What are you proposing?" asked General Okafor. "Asymmetric warfare on a cosmic scale," Admiral Vasquez answered. "We leverage every unconventional tactic in human history against an enemy that's never had to adapt to defeat." The holographic display changed to show 4 distinct operational plans, each labeled with a historical battle name. "Operation Trojan Horse," Rise explained, highlighting the first plan. "A civilian transport vessel requests emergency docking at Proxima Station, claiming critical system failures. On board, 30 Special Forces operatives disguised as maintenance crew." The Valkyrie would never fall for such a simple deception, General Zhang objected. Admiral Vasquez smiled. "They would if the transport was genuinely damaged. And if Dr. Chen's team creates a simultaneous life support emergency requiring external assistance." She advanced to the second plan, Operation Fabian. "We launch apparent attacks on Valkyrie positions throughout the sector, but each attack is actually a feint designed to draw their forces away from Proxima, stretching their resources thin." Operation Guernica, Rise continued, highlighting the third plan. "A targeted electromagnetic pulse weapon delivered via stealth drone. Not powerful enough to damage their ships permanently, but calibrated specifically to the frequency that disrupts their sensory scales, as identified by Dr. Chen's team." And finally, Admiral Vasquez concluded, Operation Maskerovka, a comprehensive disinformation campaign suggesting Earth is preparing to deploy experimental quantum resonance weapons that haven't been seen outside classified tests. General Okafor frowned. "But we don't have quantum resonance weapons." "They don't know that," Rise replied with a predatory smile. "And they can't risk assuming we're bluffing. The beauty of fighting an enemy that underestimates you is they can't distinguish between your legitimate capabilities and your deceptions." Admiral Vasquez surveyed the room. "The Valkyrie have advanced technology. They have superior firepower. What they don't have is 3,000 years of human military history, of being outgunned, outmanned, and finding ways to win anyway." She straightened to her full height. "Thermopylae Protocol has one simple directive. Demonstrate to the Valkyrie and the entire galaxy why provoking humanity is the last mistake any species should make." 23 days into the occupation, Supreme Commander Thrax was beginning to experience what humans would call irritation. Minor system malfunctions had become increasingly frequent aboard Proxima Station, environmental controls fluctuating, communications experiencing momentary disruptions, sensor arrays requiring constant recalibration. Sub-Commander Vex, he addressed his second-in-command, scales pulsing with mild agitation. "These technical issues are becoming disruptive to our operation. Have our engineers identified the cause?" Vex's scales flickered with what might have been uncertainty. "The human facility is proving more complex than anticipated, Supreme Commander. Their technology appears primitive but contains unexpected redundancies and customizations. That is no excuse for Valkyrie engineering excellence." Thrax reprimanded. "Double the technical team assigned to infrastructure control." "As you command." Vex hesitated. "There is another matter requiring your attention. A human transport vessel has appeared at the edge of our sensor range, broadcasting distress signals. They claim critical systems failure and request emergency docking." Thrax's compound eyes narrowed. "A transparent attempt at infiltration." "Most likely," Vex agreed. "However, our scans confirm their propulsion system is indeed critically damaged. Their life support is failing." "Let them die," Thrax dismissed. "It will reinforce to Earth the futility of resistance." "Supreme Commander," Vex's voice lowered, "the human Chen has requested permission to address you regarding this matter." Thrax's scales rippled with amusement. "The pragmatic human wishes to plead for his kind. Very well. His subservience amuses me. When Dr. Elias Chen was escorted onto the command deck of the Valkyrie flagship, he maintained the carefully composed demeanor he had cultivated since the occupation began. Respectful but not servile, cooperative but not eager. "Supreme Commander," he acknowledged with a slight bow. "Thank you for granting this audience." Thrax regarded the human with clinical curiosity. "You wish to speak about the transport vessel?" "I do," Chen confirmed. "While I understand your strategic concerns, refusing aid to a civilian vessel would violate multiple galactic conventions that the Dominion claims to uphold." Thrax's scales darkened. "You presume to lecture the Dominion on galactic law." "Not at all," Chen replied smoothly. "I'm simply pointing out an opportunity. Denying aid creates a martyr. Granting it demonstrates Valkyrie's superiority and benevolence, qualities that would benefit your long-term objectives in this sector." The human's logic was sound. Thrax had to admit. The Dominion did indeed value its reputation for operating within galactic norms while asserting its dominance. Furthermore, Chen continued, allowing the transport to dock would provide you with additional human specimens to study and potentially valuable salvage from their vessel. Thrax considered this. The human Chen had proven unexpectedly useful in managing the station's human population, encouraging compliance while minimizing disruptions. His counsel had merit. "Very well," Thrax decided. "The transport may dock, but it will be thoroughly scanned and its crew confined with the others." Chen bowed again. "A wise decision, Supreme Commander. If I may make one additional suggestion, our maintenance teams could assist with their docking, allowing your superior forces to focus on security rather than technical matters." The subtle flattery was transparent but effective. Thrax granted permission with a dismissive gesture. As Chen was escorted from the command deck, Thrax turned to Vex. "Maintain heightened security protocols during the docking procedure, and begin preparations for our departure from this system. We have extracted sufficient data from this facility." "Departure, Supreme Commander." The humans have proven docile, but there is no strategic value in remaining here indefinitely. Once the new specimens are processed, we will withdraw to Dominion space and release the humans as planned. Vex acknowledged the order, though his scales flickered with what might have been concern. Neither Valkyrie noticed the almost imperceptible smile that crossed Chen's face as he left the command deck. 12 hours later, the damaged transport vessel Artemis successfully docked with Proxima Station. The docking procedure had indeed been complicated by the vessel's damaged systems, requiring significant assistance. The quiet resistance. Dr. Elias Chen had been monitoring Valkyrie patrol patterns for 72 hours straight when he finally spotted the flaw in their security protocols. The former commander of Earth's 9th Asymmetric Warfare Division, now masquerading as Proxima Station's mild-mannered chief of security, allowed himself a small smile as he made note of the precise 13-second gap between sensor sweeps in Sector 7. "Found something," Dr. Sophia Lin whispered as she slid into the seat beside him in what had once been the station's cafeteria, now repurposed as a containment area for human specimens. Elias nodded almost imperceptibly. The Valkyrie guards stationed at the perimeter had exceptional hearing, and their translation matrices were constantly analyzing human speech patterns. But 72 hours of observation had also revealed that they struggled with human subtext and nonverbal cues. "They're efficient," he murmured, voice pitched just loud enough for Sophia to hear. "Military precision, but they operate like machines, predictable once you identify the pattern." Sophia passed him a ration bar, their fingers brushing in a brief moment of human contact. The gesture allowed her to slip him a small data chip, which disappeared into his sleeve. "Research team completed the inventory you requested," she said, her words innocent enough for any listening Valkyrie. "Everything they've taken from our labs, catalogued by priority." What remained unspoken? The chip contained a comprehensive list of technologies and research the Valkyrie had seized, with annotations indicating which might pose the greatest threat if weaponized against Earth. It also contained something far more valuable, the access codes to Proxima's emergency systems that the Valkyrie had yet to discover. Elias took a bite of the ration bar, buying time to survey the room. 3,000 humans confined to residential and common areas, closely monitored but treated with clinical detachment rather than cruelty. The Valkyrie didn't view them as enemies to be tormented, merely as primitive beings to be studied, and eventually returned to Earth once the station had been stripped of anything valuable. That dismissive attitude was the first weakness Elias intended to exploit. They'd started interrogating the department heads, he noted quietly. Scientific exchange, they call it. Sophia's expression hardened. Dr. Amir came back shaken yesterday. They asked questions about Earth's defenses, disguised as academic curiosity about human technological development. And what did our good doctor tell them? Exactly what we agreed upon, the truth, with strategic omissions. Elias nodded approvingly. In the 3 days since the Valkyrie takeover, he had assembled a shadow leadership structure among the station's personnel, former military, security specialists, and level-headed civilians organized into discrete cells. Their first directive: gather intelligence while appearing to cooperate. Their arrogance is astonishing, Sophia commented, watching a Valkyrie officer stride through the cafeteria, barely acknowledging the humans as anything more than furniture. They genuinely believe we're no threat. Good, Elias replied. The best position in any conflict is to be underestimated. That night, as the station's lighting dimmed to simulate Earth's diurnal cycle, Elias convened his core team in Maintenance Shaft 12. One of the few areas they'd confirmed was free of Valkyrie surveillance. The small space was cramped with 8 humans hunched in a circle, their faces illuminated by a single low-powered emergency light. Status reports, Elias commanded quietly. Dr. James Okoro, the station's chief engineer, spoke first. They've integrated their systems with our power grid and life support, but clumsily. They understand the technology, but not the customizations. I've identified 3 backdoor access points they missed. Can you trigger selective failures? Elias asked. Okoro nodded. On your command. Security update. Former Marine Lieutenant Diaz continued. They've established a command center in the main research lab, approximately 40 combat personnel rotating in 8-hour shifts, with another 60 aboard their vessels. Their personal armor appears to use some kind of reactive technology. It hardens in response to kinetic impacts. Weapons, Elias prompted. Energy-based, similar to plasma but more focused. They carry sidearms at all times. Heavier weapons are stored in their command center.